differences, but we do well in times like these to remember that everyone who serves in our nation's capital is here because, above all, they love our country.
Well, the Trumps also visiting with one of those wounded heroes, Capitol Police Officer Crystal Griner, last night.
Well, we're learning some new details about the shooter himself as the people who knew James Hodgkinson react to the news of his horrific act of violence.
That's right. Jackie Ibanez has been looking into the gunman's past and joins us with more on that. Jackie.
Hi, good morning, Rob and Heather. Well, investigators quickly trying to piece together the background of James Hodgkinson. Until March, he was a retired home inspector living in Belleville, Illinois with his wife. A neighbor describes him as an angry little man. In 2006, he punched a woman in the face and then dragged her daughter down by her hair. He also hit a man with the butt of a shotgun and then fired it in anger. A friend says he had a temper, but nothing like this.
I mean, he was in a few fights and stuff like that, but nothing that would demonstrate violence as far as what he did.
What do you mean by that, like fights with people?
Well, he'd never back down from anybody. In a bar fight or whatever, he stood his ground.
Now, political social media posts showing Hodgkinson became deeply troubled by the presidential election. In one of the posts, he writes, quote, "Trump is a traitor. Trump has destroyed our democracy. It's time to destroy Trump and company." Hodgkinson volunteered for Bernie Sanders' campaign. Immediately addressing that on the Senate floor was Bernie.
I am sickened by this despicable act, and let me be as clear as I can be. Violence of any kind is unacceptable in our society, and I condemn this action in the strongest possible terms.
Once in Virginia, we're told he lived in a car and hung around the YMCA where he was seen just before that shooting. Hodgkinson also became a regular at a barbecue restaurant near the baseball field. Staff says he was rude but never mentioned politics. The New York Times reports the gunman called his wife on the day before the shooting to tell her he was coming home because he missed her and his dogs. Back to you, Heather and Rob.
Sheesh. All right, Jackie, thanks so much.
Well, as Jackie just mentioned to us, the gunman's social media post revealing a blatant anti-Trump bias.
So was this a warning? And what can law enforcement learn from these messages? Here to weigh in, former member of the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, Steve Rogers. Steve, I'm sure you were disturbed by this as we all were. What do you make of it and these hints that this might have happened?
Well, to begin with, we need to send a message out to the American people that we must address our problems through ballots, not bullets. And this is what law enforcement is going to do this morning, is find out the motive. Why did this individual resort to bullets? Now, what are they going to find out through social media? I understand that as law enforcement is doing forensic studies on his computers and on his social media accounts, a number of people have been dropping off as being friends or contacts on his media pages. So law enforcement is going to try to find those names and see if anyone else may have known something or perhaps been involved in conversations with him regarding this very, very terrible incident.
Well, and we do know at this point he was actually a member of several anti-Trump groups on Facebook, so they can look at all of those members as well.
Well, you're exactly right. The other issue here is, and you know, this is not a time to place blame, but there's a common thread and a common progression. First, it was verbal assaults on our lawmakers, then physical violence, and now we have a tremendous amount of violence that was perpetrated the other day. When celebrities get on the air and are holding the president's head as if he was beheaded, when there are plays and there are other events going on depicting the assassination of our president, these are trigger points. And believe me, law enforcement is going to look at all of this to find out if these things that were aired over the past several weeks caused this individual, brought him over the top. That doesn't mean he is not responsible for his actions and that the others are responsible. I'm not suggesting that, but there are mitigating circumstances that led up to him to cause this terrible, terrible, tragic incident.
In all your years with the FBI and in law enforcement, can you recall a time that was this charged where it just seemed like everything was so volatile, especially in politics?
In the 38 years I've been a law enforcement officer, I've never seen it this bad. And the responsibility now is on all of our shoulders as American people. I've asked the past week for Americans across this country, calm down, lower the temperature. Let's come together before we open our mouths, before we speak publicly. And those of us on television, I'm very cognizant of the fact that the words I say can have a lot of meaning to different people. And I want that meaning to be civil, and I want it to be to a point where we're going to all come together and address these problems.
You know, I heard a congressman yesterday refer to it as rhetorical terrorism, and I'd never heard that term before. And he talked about, using those trigger words that to, someone who is in a right state of mind, they won't mean something like they would mean to someone like the shooter yesterday.
Well, that's absolutely right, and it's some of the things we see on TV. Look, those of us that have a national platform, we can either validate or invalidate somebody's action unintendedly by what we say and do. We all have to step up and be accountable and responsible for our actions, and I'm hoping to God Almighty that this actually allows us to do that.
No, so do we. Yeah. Steve, thank you so much for coming on this morning. That's a lot of great insight. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, 11 minutes after the hour here and breaking